Plus, a self-driving Uber kills a pedestrian in Arizona, forcing the company to halt its autonomous car tests in all locations. Another round of inter-Korean talks are taking place today, this time to arrange details for a South Korean arts troupe to visit Pyongyang. Delegations from both sides are due to meet any minute at the border village of Panmunjom. We now connect to our Unification Ministry correspondent Kwon Jang-oh, who's at the Special Office for Inter-Korean Dialogue in Seoul. Jang-oh.
Good morning, Mark. The South Korean delegation left here a couple of hours ago, and they should be meeting the North Korean side any minute now at the border village of Panmunjom. Now, the South Korean delegation is being led by Yoon Sang, a singer and composer who was chosen by Seoul to be the director for the arts troupe. He's being accompanied by officials from the Unification Ministry and the Presidential Office. The North Korean delegation is being led by Hyun Sung-wol, the arts director for the troupe who performed in South Korea during last month's Winter Olympics. They're expected to discuss the arrangements of an arts performance in Pyongyang, ranging from the date and time of the performance, or possibly multiple performances, to the number of performers and the type of music that will be played. They could also agree to have a preliminary visit for Yoon so that he can inspect venues, which is what the North Koreans did for their performances.
So there is plenty to discuss then, Jang-oh, but the North Korean performances in the South really were a mixture of North Korean songs with some South Korean pop and even Western music thrown in for good measure. What do you think we can expect from South Korea's performance?
Well, Seoul's decision to choose Yoon Sang is an interesting one. He started his career 30-odd years ago as a singer in the early 90s, and now he's a composer and music producer for the Stars. Now, he's dabbled in all sorts of music, from classic ballads in his younger days to modern K-pop and even electronic dance music, or EDM. So the hope is that he'll be able to represent the range of South Korean music well. It'll be interesting to see how the discussions go as well, because it's very rare for a civilian to be involved in these kind of talks and not a government official. The concert will likely take place early April before the summit between the leaders of the two Koreas, which is slated for late April. I'll be back later to keep you up to date on the latest situation. Back to you, Mark.
Well, thank you very much for that report, Jang-oh. Now, preparations are in full swing for a so-called Track 1.5 meeting in Finland, an unofficial gathering of government officials and non-governmental experts from South Korea, North Korea and the United States. Expected to focus on the upcoming Inter-Korean Summit and US-North Korea Summit, the secretive meeting will be held for 2 days starting Tuesday and bring together 6 representatives from each of the 3 countries. The list of attendees includes South Korean security experts, Pyongyang's Deputy Director General for North American Affairs, Choi Kang-il, and the former US Ambassador to South Korea, Kathleen Stevens. South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa has been discussing North Korea with top diplomats from the European Union. Speaking at the EU Foreign Affairs Council on Monday, Kang explained the fast-changing situation on the Korean Peninsula now that Pyongyang has shown a strong inclination to talk. She asked for the EU's continued support and cooperation in establishing peace within the region. On the sidelines of the meeting, Kang was briefed by her Swedish counterpart on her talks with North Korea's top diplomat Lee Myung-bak. They called the upcoming summits with North Korea a turning point in resolving the nuclear issue and bringing lasting peace to the region. South Korean military authorities are going to announce the schedules of the Seoul-Washington annual joint military drills, Key Resolve and Fall Eagle. They will do so in about an hour from now. The drills were originally supposed to kick off in late February or early March, but were postponed until after the Pyeongchang Paralympics wrapped up to encourage North Korea's participation in the Paralympics, but also the Olympics as well. As for now, it's known that the drills will start on April 1st. But the drills could be shorter and smaller in scale than previous years, with less US strategic assets involved, as Seoul hopes to continue the ongoing dialogue momentum with North Korea. Prosecutors have sought court approval to arrest former President Lee Myung-bak over a series of corruption allegations. Investigators say the gravity of the allegations and the high risk of destroying evidence were the major reasons behind the request. Our Kim Hyo-sun with the details.
Prosecutors requested an arrest warrant for former President Lee Myung-bak on Monday over 12 corruption charges. Lee, who served as South Korea's president from 2008 to 2013, is suspected of receiving around $10 million in bribes. The prosecution also believes he's the real owner of Tues, an auto parts company which he used as a channel to accumulate illicit slush funds amounting to nearly $30 million. The arrest warrant request comes 5 days after Lee was summoned by the prosecution for questioning on March 14th over charges of bribery, embezzlement, and tax evasion. The prosecution explained that the arrest warrant was unavoidable, considering the gravity of the allegations and Lee's continual denial of the allegations, which could prompt him to destroy evidence. The court is expected to decide whether to issue an arrest warrant by late Wednesday at the earliest. If Lee is arrested, he will become the nation's fourth former president to be arrested on criminal charges. Kim Hyo-sun, ArirangNews.
Now, South Korea is urging the United States to exempt it from the Trump administration's upcoming steel tariffs. Seoul's finance chief made the request directly to his U.S. counterpart, this on the sidelines of a G20 meeting in Argentina. 𝘒𝘰𝘳𝘕 reports.
With finance ministers and central bank governors of the G20 member states coming together for a meeting in Buenos Aires, South Korea's finance minister Kim Dong-yeon used the opportunity to urge U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin to exempt South Korea from the stiff steel tariffs, first proposed by President Trump earlier this month. Kim said the tariffs could send the wrong signal at a time when the two nations are working closely together on North Korea. He also emphasized that South Korean steel goods do not pose a threat to the U.S. steel industry with the current South Korean outbound shipment trend and its low market share in the U.S. This comes as Seoul has been negotiating with Washington through multiple channels to earn a reprieve from the 25% steel tariff, which is set to take effect on Friday. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce, South Korea shipped 3.6 million tons of steel products to the U.S. in 2017, making it the number 3 steel exporter after Canada and Brazil. And while major U.S. trade partners like Canada, China, and the EU have threatened to take retaliatory action, the South Korean government has remained cautious amid the ongoing negotiations to amend the South Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. During last week's third round of FTA talks between South Korea and the U.S., South Korea's Trade Minister Kim Yan-jong met with U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer in an effort to get Seoul exempted from the proposed steel tariffs. Yoo Myung-hee, who led the third round of talks, has also extended her stay throughout this week to assist in Kim's outreach efforts. Industry officials say the new duties, in addition to the existing tariffs, would sharply raise the prices of South Korean exports. Seoul is concerned that trade tensions have spiked at a politically sensitive time when close consultations are needed between the two allies ahead of the respective summits with North Korea to resolve the nuclear standoff. 𝘒𝘰𝘳, ArirangNews.
Now for a look at stories making headlines around the world, and we're going to start in the United States. The ride-sharing company Uber says it's suspending its self-driving car tests after a fatal accident in Arizona. For more on this and other international news, let's turn, as we always do, to our Noah Adam. So Adam, this is reported to be the first time a pedestrian has been killed by an autonomous vehicle. What kind of blowback do we think this could have?
Well, Mark, it could deal a huge blow to not only Uber's long-term business model and strategy, but the general idea of having self-driving cars out on public roads. Uber has consistently touted that its driverless cars are safer than vehicles driven by humans, but autonomous cars have been prone to accidents, with some being caught running red lights and others even colliding with other traffic. But now that a pedestrian has been killed, the technology has once again come under fire. Police said the Volvo was in self-driving mode with a supervisor behind the wheel when the 49-year-old woman, identified as Elaine Hertzberg, was hit on Sunday night. She later died in hospital. The issue has also raised questions about legislation related to autonomous driving, especially amid a fierce battle between car makers to master the technology. In the U.S., the federal government has voluntary guidelines for companies that want to test autonomous vehicles, leaving much of the regulation up to the states. Although there has been a gradual increase in legislation, many are still wary of the technology. Sunday's incident will only add to those fears and will likely spark significant calls for reform and reflections within the industry. Western leaders and Russian President Vladimir Putin have struck a softer tone after he was re-elected to a fourth term on Sunday. German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron both wished Putin success. Merkel also called on her Russian counterpart to work for solutions to international issues without specifying which ones. But Macron reiterated his concerns about Russia's involvement in Syria and also called on Moscow to clarify its role in the recent poisoning of a Russian ex-spy in England. The White House said there was currently no congratulatory call scheduled between Putin and President Trump. After his election victory, Putin said he was open to dialogue with other countries. He added that he would cut defense spending to avoid an arms race and focus on the domestic economy instead. The European Union's Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier and his UK counterpart David Davis have agreed a deal for a British withdrawal from the EU. After talks on Monday, both sides reached a 2-year transition deal, which the UK is calling an implementation period to give Britain time to adjust after the leaving the bloc in March next year. The deal will give the UK access to the single market and customs union, as well as allow the movement of businesses and people for 21 months after the Brexit date. However, key sticking points remain, including the issue of keeping open the Irish border.
We have agreed that the issues...
Now we're going to turn to the latest on efforts to revise South Korea's constitution. The presidential office of Cheongwade says President Moon Jae-in plans to submit his own bill for the amendment to the National Assembly by early next week. And for 3 days, starting today, the top office will unveil different elements of the planned amendments to the public. Our Hwang Oh-jun reports.
Less than a week after President Moon was briefed on the outline of the government's own bill on constitutional revision, the Blue House delivered its ultimatum to the parliament Monday morning.
The president has instructed the Blue House to prepare the government bill for submission on March 26th.
According to a Blue House official, the 26th is the absolute latest that a bill for the constitutional amendment can be proposed. Whether made by the Blue House or the National Assembly, the bill must go through parliamentary voting within 60 days from the day the motion was made. Also, people must be notified of a referendum at least 18 days prior to the actual voting day. President Moon has been adamant that a proposal for a constitutional change must be made, either by the government or the parliament, by the end of March, so that a referendum on the amendment can be held at the same time as the local elections in June. Otherwise, it could result in more than $110 million in extra costs. The Blue House confirmed the move is intended to comply with the procedures and terms set by the Constitution and the Korean law, while giving the National Assembly a last chance to agree on a constitutional amendment and come up with its own proposal.
President Moon again said he will respect the agreement made at the National Assembly and asked Parliament to quickly discuss and reach an agreement on its own bill.
And to help people's understanding of the bill proposed by the government, President Moon ordered his aides to disclose the contents of the revision proposal over 3 days, the preamble to the Constitution and matters related to basic rights on Tuesday, decentralization and popular sovereignty on Wednesday, and rights and privileges of constitutional institutions, including the form of government, on Thursday. The deadline of March 26 means the government's proposal will be made while President Moon is visiting Vietnam and the United Arab Emirates, where he'll be from the 22nd to the 28th of this month. Hong-Jun, ArirangNews.
The Moon Jae-in administration plans to bring about big changes to the nation's management policies. The long-term goal is to create a government that's owned by the citizens. Our Kim Mo-kyun reports.
At the first ever Government Innovative Strategy meeting held at the Seoul Government Complex on Monday, the Moon Jae-in administration confirmed its plans to shift the government's pre-existing management method to a more public-centered one. During his opening remarks, President Moon said the ultimate goal of the measures is for the government to recover its relationship with the public.
우리 정부의 최우선의 혁신 목표를 한마디로 압축하면 정부와 공직의 공공성을 회복하는 것이라고 할 수 있습니다. 국민과 정부 또 국민과 공직의 관계를 바르게 세우는 것입니다.
The measures include increasing the number of high-ranking female workers to 10% in the senior executive service, 20% for executives of public institutions, and 40% for governmental commissions. The government also vowed to permanently operate the current Gwanghwamun First Street communication channel, where the public can raise their concerns over various policies through both online and offline methods. It will also allow the public to make use of various facilities such as parking lots and seminar rooms in government buildings. Some other key policies include measures to eliminate graft and corruption and create a safe working environment where workers won't have to worry about sexual assaults. The list was created by taking in ideas from public servants alongside more than 2,000 citizens who participated in an online forum over the past month. Korea's Interior and Safety Minister Kim Bu-kyum, who introduced the overall direction of the plan, said that through the measures, the government seeks to increase the quality of life in Korea and the level of trust in the government, as well as reduce the nation's corruption level over the next 4 years. The latest move comes as part of President Moon's New Year pledge to change the current system in order to improve public's quality of life. The government says that it plans to receive and establish detailed plans from related organizations by April and hold an overall evaluation if the plans have been put into action by the end of the year. Kim Mo-kyun, ArirangNews.
Now, South Korea's new northern policy centers around creating a huge economic area that would expand from the Korean Peninsula and the Russian Far East all the way to Eurasia. Public and private sector experts gathered in Seoul on Monday to talk about the details of the government plan to help find a new growth engine. Kim Hae-sung reports.
Forming a peaceful and prosperous northern economic community. Around 200 participants, including academics, foreign diplomats, and Korean government officials, gathered in Seoul on Monday to share their insight on the new northern policy, which aims to connect Korea with Russia, Mongolia, and other Eurasian countries.
We are witnessing improving inter-Korean ties and a rare opportunity for denuclearization and peace on the Korean Peninsula. Northern economic cooperation has been a dream for Korea and Eurasia since the post-Cold War period. There's more room for development, and we hope to bring about even greater shared prosperity.
The Eurasian region that connects Europe and Asia is emerging as a strategic hub in the 21st century. China, India, and Russia are all pushing for initiatives to integrate the region economically. President Moon Jae-in also unveiled Korea's plan to connect the region at the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok last September. Since then, projects involving the natural gas, agriculture, and fisheries sectors have been gaining traction, with Korean and Russian representatives establishing a consultative body to iron out the details early this month.
We should think about future. And I suppose the main focus may be made on science and technology cooperation. So we have to cooperate to produce new knowledge, new technologies, new materials. It will be much better than to use Korean technology to develop Russian resources.
Representatives and diplomats from Eurasia said it's not the first time Korea has proposed a plan to integrate the region, and said there should be more experts on Eurasia, people-to-people exchanges, and science and technology cooperation on top of resource and logistics development. To do that, Korean representatives said financing is a key challenge, and that securing a safe, business-friendly environment for Korean companies hoping to invest in the region is critical, with some suggesting ideas like creating an investment bank for financing. Experts emphasize that cooperation should start with small, feasible projects to build mutual trust, and that long-term consistency is needed to turn the vision of new northern policy into reality. Kim Hae-sung, ArirangNews.
Now, South Korea's producer prices rose for the second month in a row in February. The Bank of Korea says last month's producer price index, a barometer of future consumer inflation, reached 103.99, up 0.4% compared to the previous month and 1.3% on year. The index is at its highest point since November 2014. Prices of agricultural and fisheries products jumped 5.7% on year, hitting a high not seen since mid-2016 due to the cold weather and soaring demand during the Lunar New Year holiday. Prices of petrochemicals, they rose 0.8% from a month earlier, while service prices edged up 0.1%. Now, despite recent sluggish sales in the US market, South Korea's Hyundai Motor and its affiliate Kia Motors posted increased sales of their recreational vehicles so far this year. Korea's two biggest automakers say they sold over 77,000 SUVs and minivans during the first 2 months of this year in America, backed by a boom in the leisure industry. The Korean automakers plan to expand their lineup of RVs to more effectively target the market.
Good morning. Dress warmly on your way out. A spring chill is here in Seoul, along with strong gusty winds, while those in Tokyo will have a breezy and rainy day with cooler than average temperatures. But first, let's take a look at the domestic weather forecast. Temperatures have dropped a few notches, hovering a couple degrees lower than the seasonal average, and the spring chill will be here with us until Thursday, so you make sure dress accordingly. Daily highs in Seoul will only reach up to 9 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Busan will only make it to 8 degrees under lots of clouds, and Jeju will be rainy all day today. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. So spring chill has arrived here in Seoul. It's going to feel more like February in the southern provinces, while most parts of North Korea will have relatively mild temperatures under sunny skies. As for the rest of Asia, those in Beijing will need to be aware of wide gaps in temperatures between the lows and highs and expect to have mostly sunny skies today. Sydney will be rainy on Tuesday and can expect to see showers until Friday. And heading to North America, the DC region could feel the impact of a mix of rain and snow on Monday night into Tuesday morning, even stretching into Wednesday. And as for South America, Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro will have unstable weather conditions on this Tuesday. And taking you to Europe, it may feel like winter will never end as the cold snap continues across Europe. And those of you in Berlin will see snow on Tuesday. Lastly, to Africa, winds will pick up in Algiers with light rain in the forecast. And that's all the weather update for now.
Well, on that peaceful note, that's where we're going to leave the news for now. Our next bulletin is coming up at noon Korea time. So until then, goodbye.